Well, hello everyone and welcome to week 52 of my life as an L3 CTS cadet pilot. It's week 21 in New Zealand and this week's episode is going to be a special one. It's the PT1 special, as I like to call it. PT1 in the syllabus is known as Progress Test 1 and it's basically the first major flight exam that we have in the syllabus. So on that note, roll titles. So, PT1, so basically it's the sort of equivalent to a PPL exam, but it's not PPL. So basically, on the integrated EASA course that we do here at L3, we do one PT1 profile flight, which is like a mock exam for the real thing. And then after that, we get given our feedback on how we can improve. And then we get given 2 solo flights, 1 general handling, 1 navigation flight, and then that is it. It's the real PT1 exam. So I'm going to go through in order how things have gone for me. So I had my PT1 profile on the Monday, and I had that with an instructor I've never had before. And what was my route? So for PT1, we start with a nav route. On this occasion, because it was a profile, we didn't do a very long one. So where did we go? It was to a place called, if I can find it, Te Poi, which is very small, and I can highly recommend this for any exams that involve navigation. If you're going somewhere that isn't big on the map, go on Google Earth and look at it, what it looks like from above, because the only reason why I managed to find Te Poi is because I'd researched what was there. I knew there was a school, I knew there was a petrol station, and I knew there was a few houses around it. Apart from that, and a crossroad intersection, that is it. So it's very difficult to find, and the way I found it on my nav flight was by basically tracing the roads from Matamata to Te Poi. So it's a very crude method, but it does work. And then once I got to Te Poi, we then did an in-flight diversion, which you're not supposed to know where you're going, but judging by the location that was picked, I was about 90% sure that I was going to be diverting to Tokoroa, which is down here. So in my head, I already had an idea of what to do. And as we got to Te Poi, my instructor, he was like, yep, you've probably worked out already, you're going to be diverting to Tokoroa. So I was like, great. Quickly whipped the map out, put myself into a couple of orbits. It was a bit lumpy, so I actually moved myself a little bit away from Te Poi. And once I'd planned my diversion, I then flew back to Te Poi and then flew the diversion. So, diversion went well, no corrections required, so that was quite good, so that was handy. Got to Tokoroa, did a standard overhead join, which comes up quite a lot in the exam. And then did 1 normal landing, that went fine. Then I came in for a flapless landing, and it was about 200 feet from the runway. I encountered some pretty nasty wind shear to the point where I was no longer lined up at the centre of the runway. As a matter of fact, I was lined up at the edge of the runway. And by the time I got down to about 50 feet, I just went, you know what, this is a really unstable approach, I'm going around, went full power, flaps back to approach, and up I went, so that was a good call in the end. Then after that, I was asked to do a glide approach, and that went really well. I encountered a little bit of wind shear on this one, but it was nowhere near as bad. But I think that had something to do with me coming in at a much steeper profile angle, which you'd normally do on a glide anyway, so that worked out really well. And then we departed back up to the north, to the Putaruru and Tirau area, which is where we then did a bit of instruments flying, including a couple of compass turns, which isn't in the PPL syllabus but is in the PT1 exam. First couple of compass turns have made a bit of a mess. I did one of them the wrong way, but did 2 more and they ended up being okay. It was a case of me trying to impress the examiner and doing it really quickly, when actually it's just better to take your time, think through, right, what way is my aircraft pointing, what way do I want it to point, is it onus, is it unos? Yeah, it's best to take your time with compass turns, as I found out. So after compass turns, came off the IFR hood and then did a bit of aerial work. So that included all 3 of these stalls, so clean configuration, approach configuration on base to final turn, and the full landing configuration stall. Also did steep turns, 360 degrees to the left and 360 degrees to the right. It was quite funny actually, because my first steep turn was a little bit on the steep side for my instructor's liking, but it turned out it was to the exam standard, so that was fine. So I think the requirement is a minimum of 45 degrees, and I may have slipped over to 60 at a couple of points, but it was all within limits. I think it's we're not allowed to gain or lose 100 feet, which sounds a lot, but it really isn't, so you really have to concentrate, keep a really good look at going into the turn. So that went really well. We didn't do a PFL on this one, because PFLs, they usually don't come up on the PT1 exams. About a 1 in 10 chance, I've been told. And we'd already done a glide approach, and my instructor was pleased with that glide approach, so he was happy to say PFLs are fine. Then we did a couple of in-flight emergencies, so simulating electrical fires, radio failures, inadvertent instrument meteorological conditions, all the sort of things that come up on the exam, and then basically flew back into Hamilton. So overall, the profile went really well. I was given a few pointers to work on, and basically, very next day, I went straight into my general handling flight. Managed to get a really long circuit session in. I think I was in the circuit for almost an hour in the end, so that was quite nice. Got 10 touch and goes done, 3 of which were flappers, but unfortunately only 1 of them was a glide approach, and that was just because the airspace at Hamilton is so busy with circuit traffic and commercial traffic on occasions. You basically have to keep requesting for glides until you get one, and I only got 1. Would have liked 2, but there we go. Then I flew out to the west, out towards Raglan. Didn't go all the way out to Raglan on this occasion because of time constraints. Did 1 of every manoeuvre, so I did 1 of each stall, 2 steep turns, 1 left, 1 right. What was the other one? Oh yeah, did a couple of PFLs as well, and did a bit of slow flight coming back into the control zone. So overall that flight went very well. One of the bits of feedback I got on my PT1 profile was that my nav technique was to a very high standard, didn't really need working on, so I used the nav flight to do a sort of mini epic flight. It's 2.5 hours, and we'll consult this chart for this one. So for this nav flight, I went from Hamilton to Rotorua to Taupo, or Topo, depends on how you pronounce it. Landed at both of them, by the way. Then flew to Taumaranui, which I didn't land at because that's a dual-only airfield for us at L3. And then flew back to Hamilton, basically. So yeah, what happened? Rotorua, Taupo, completely uneventful, hardly any wind, really good. Got a bit lost going to Taumarunui because there isn't really, once you've gone beyond Lake Taupo, there isn't really any features you can use. There's a couple of hills, but they're very easy to get confused with each other, and unfortunately the aircraft I was in on this particular day, the directional indicator had a lot more wander in it than it normally would, and it turned out on this leg it had in fact wandered by about 15-20 degrees, so it explains why I was a little bit north of track. And there's a couple of hills here which I knew should have been on my right, and I could see they were on my left, but I couldn't verify that those hills were the ones that I was looking at on the map. So what I did was I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep maintaining this heading. It was Taumarunui. The town is quite easy to spot, and sure enough, about 2 minutes before I got to my estimated arrival time, I looked out to my left side and there was the town of Taumarunui down there, so I was like, great, C2, fly 2. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Overflew that and then came back towards Hamilton, got about 2/3 of the way back, so to the Otorohanga area. realised I had quite a bit of time left over still, so what I did was I flew out back towards Tokoroa and then tracked the Waikato River back in, and it was quite entertaining because it was becoming the evening and it's basically rush hour back at Hamilton. Everyone's diving back in before sunset, so we don't bust any rules. And literally, the person in front of me, I was following her in, and yeah, that was quite entertaining. We was all talking to each other on the radio, and then, sure enough, about a minute after I did my call, one of my mates behind me called up in one of the Cessnas and said, "Oh, I'm going to follow you in, Jack," and I was just like, "Well, hang on, you're going a bit quicker than I am." And he was like, "No, that's fine, I'll just slow down," but I had an extra 5 knots on just in case. And then, yeah, flew back into Hamilton, and that was quite entertaining really, because pretty much everyone that was in the circuit at the time I knew, and that's good fun. So that's the profile and the 2 solo flights done, so that only leaves the PT1 exam. So, PT1 exam, so far everyone has passed it. I am the second to last person to have a crack at it, so yeah. Basically, with PT1, you need to try and treat it as if it's any other dual flight, but it's completely normal to be a bit nervous. Try and do as much as you plan in the night before, but obviously you can't do your route plan because you've not been given it. So, 2 hours prior to my breaks off time, I went to my examiner and he gave me a route to fly. And my route was from, could do it on this one? No, I'll do it on this one. It was from Hamilton to Mercer Airfield, and the first thing I thought was, oh dear, I've never been to Mercer before. I sure hope he doesn't make me do circuits there. So I had a chat with him when I was planning the route, and I said to him, "Are we going to be doing circuits at Mercer?" And he was just like, "It's unlikely." Basically meaning that we're going to be diverting before this. So I planned to Mercer, started my route at Temple View, which is where the west departure ends at. And the reason why I started it from there is because if you fly over a highly populated area below 1,000 feet AGL, you can fail your exam. So considering the departure is flown 1,200 feet above sea level and the terrain around there is 200 feet, there's no leeway, so it's better to fly a standard departure to the west and then fly around the city of Hamilton. So, started flying that leg, all going fine, got about halfway, just past Huntley, and then he was like, "Okay, you're right, you're not going to be going to Mercer. You can either fly to Mercer and then divert me to Matamata, which is my diversion, which is over here, or you can pick a place on your route and divert me from there." Now, I didn't feel particularly happy about starting my diversion from Mercer because I'd never been there before. So I picked a point that I'd been to before, and that was called Te Kaufata, which is on the corner of this lake here. Picked that, orbited a couple of times over it, and then turned en route towards Matamata. But again, Matamata, I haven't been there I haven't landed there for 4 months. So I quickly whipped the airfield plate out and just refreshed my knowledge. And one of the things I picked up on was no overhead joints. So I had to make sure I joined onto a direct, either a downwind or a straight-in approach. Meanwhile, en route to Matamata, he was like, "How's it all going?" I was like, "Yeah, I feel like I'm en route, I've calculated the drift fine." And he was like, "Okay, great, do you see any good fields around here?" And at that point I thought, uh-oh, he's going to give me a PFL. And I was just like, "Yeah, there's a good one down to the left." And then sure enough, he reaches over, closes the throttles and goes, "Simulated engine failure." And was only at 2,300 feet. So, yeah, but essentially when you're at that altitude, you turn so that you've got a tailwind and then you come around and just fly the low-key part of your PFL. Thankfully it went very well. We went around at quite a high altitude anyway, so that was quite nice. Came into Matamata, which is where I did a direct join onto downwind, and then did a flapless approach. Landed a little bit long. There was the potential that I could have gone around, but there was still quite a lot of runway left. Did that, and then went to the south, down towards Tirau again. Did my aerial works, did all the stalls, all the steep turns, Then on the way back into Hamilton we did simulated instrument meteorological conditions, so I've got the IFR hood on. Did a couple of compass turns, they all went flawlessly this time thankfully. And he was talking to me like, oh, what would you do? So you're in IMC, you've climbed up to your minimum sector altitude, what are you going to do? I'm like, oh, I'll be calling up either Hamilton or Bay Approach. And he was like, great, that's really good. What would you do if your radio failed? And I'll be like, well, I can't go into controlled airspace, so I'd probably get my phone out and phone up in Hamilton Town. And be like, yeah, great. What if your phone was out of battery? I'd then turn around and said, well, I'd use your phone. Great. What if I didn't have my phone with me? And at that point, I just turned around to him and said, well, if that's happened, then I think we're screwed. But he was like, yeah, that's fine. Had myself well covered. Came back into Hamilton, did a normal landing, and within about 5 minutes of arriving, he said, yep, you passed that, that's a really good exam you've done there, so congratulations. I'm just going to check to see if the camera was still running, so hang on a minute. Yep, the camera was still running. I remembered a few episodes ago it ran out of memory card space, but I've just checked there's loads left on it, so I can get the rest of this episode in. So that was really good news. I passed PT1. Normally, if you follow the syllabus in the exact order it's supposed to be done in, that means that would be the basic phase of the L3 flight training complete. But because of how the weather's gone and how scheduling works things, I've still got a couple more flights to do before I can be officially signed off of the basic phase of flight training. I've still got to do 2 more night landings, and I've also got to still do my CPL cross-country qualifier. Hopefully we'll have that done within the next week or 2, fingers crossed. But in the meantime, I should be allowed to start on the advanced phase of training, which I believe starts with 6 flights in the DA42 Twin Star Flight Simulator. And that I'm really looking forward to. And on that note, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy. Bye bye.